Hello there, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Leadership Synergized. I'm pleased today to have an extremely special guest, Mr. Greg Roach, the superintendent of Daleville Community, Daleville School Corporation, located in the northern part of the state of Indiana. Mr. Roach, thank you so much for joining. And just for transparency, Greg and I became acquainted not too long ago, probably in the last 6 months or so. He is working currently, as we record this episode, on his doctorate degree with a university that I just happen to be involved in teaching some postgraduate level courses in. Mr. Roach, again, thank you so much. God bless you for being here. I'm very appreciative.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure.
Well, what we attempt to do as we talk with our guests and provide for the viewers and the listeners is just to bring value, Mr. Roach, on the guest experience. In this case, your experiences you've had throughout your career. You're an educator first and foremost, and we'll talk about the leadership experiences you've had. And look, if you want to focus only on successes, that's fantastic, but you'll find I'll talk a lot about my failures, because without them, I'm not sure I would be sitting here today. In essence, we all as leaders have things that maybe don't go as well as we would like, and we'll get into some of that as well. In particular, as we explore the concept of not allowing the fast-paced world that we all face, whether it's in education, business, manufacturing, or any other industry, that sometimes really challenge and bring stress into that leader's life, into the lives of the individuals. And as I reflect back at this stage of my life, when I consider the experiences and the greatest successes my teams and I, and it's my teams, God has blessed me with great people around me. Any success I've been a part of is solely because of them. If there was any anchor on a team, it usually was me in that regard, as far as holding back. But, just being able to, when we were able to slow things down and yet accomplish what we wanted to do within budget, within time frame, within or even exceeding expectations, it's because of the concept I'm calling still leadership. And still, it doesn't mean we stop and do nothing, but it's around serving, transforming, inspiring, influencing, loving, and leading. And we're going to talk with Mr. Roach about his experiences there in that aspect as we go through this episode. Mr. Roach, before we get going, just a little bit of background about you, your school, and where you are today, so to speak, in your leadership.
Okay. Yeah, as you said, I'm the superintendent of schools at Daleville Community Schools in Daleville, Indiana. It's a little closer to Anderson, about halfway between Anderson and Muncie. We have about 1,000 students. Our ADM in the fall was 1028, and then in the spring was 1,000. So we could talk about those ADM days and how I'd like to just be in the fall. But about 1,000 students. It's a small community. Our complex for schools, we bought an old house about 14 years ago, well before I was here, converted it into the superintendent's office. And then directly south of that is the high school, and then directly south of that, on the other side of our baseball field, the elementary school. So very close proximity to all the buildings, with the administration office, superintendent's office at the end, which I love, to be honest with you, because I can get in the buildings. I walk a lot, and they have a golf cart for me, but I never use it. I'll walk through the high school and talk to people, see people, and continue on to elementary and spend some time there. And almost every day I'm on campus, I'm in the buildings, which for me is a joy. I get to go in and see students learning, see teachers doing great things in their classroom, providing those opportunities for students. But Daleville, I talk about the Bronco family, and I truly mean that. It is a family atmosphere, tight-knit. It's just a great place to be. I've been on the job as a superintendent. It's my second year. And anytime you apply for a job, you should do some research, and heard some really great things about Daleville. It's a great place to be. And I tell people here that everything I heard about it, it's even better. Not that we don't have any problems, we don't have any issues to deal with, but just a lot of good people in the community and the schools, the staff, the students. Just a wonderful place to be. I feel so blessed to be able to have this opportunity.
I'm sure the school community is blessed to have a leader such as yourself. Mr. Roach, prior to becoming a superintendent, what other experiences in education or in industry have you had in your career?
I started as a 7th and 8th grade math teacher at Whitco Middle School up north in South Whitley, Indiana, between Warsaw and Fort Wayne. I spent 3 years as a math teacher, and then our high school athletic director job came open, and I applied for that, was able to get that job. Stayed there at Whitco High School as the AD for 3 years. And then I'm from the Kokomo area, so closer to Indianapolis, and wanted to be more in that area. So moved to Mount Vernon High School in Fortville, Indiana as the athletic director for 12 years. And then decided I wanted to keep that upward path into administration. I moved into an assistant principal's role for 7 years, principal at Mount Vernon for 3 years. And then my daughter, my last child, I graduated from high school in 2019. So I decided to graduate from Mount Vernon with her and got a business manager, assistant superintendent's job at Blackford Schools that I was in for about 1 year and 3/4. And then I was selected to be the Daleville superintendent. And they let me come in April with our former superintendent, Paul Garrison, finishing the school year as the superintendent. And I was the assistant superintendent until the end of June, which was a great opportunity for me to come in and get to know people, make plans for the next school year. Mr. Garrison took care of all the day-to-day responsibilities, operations, and parent complaints and things like that. And I truly just could come in and get my feet on the ground rather than come in like July 1st when nobody's around. That led to the last 2 years I've been the superintendent here.
Excellent. A great deal of diverse opportunities to learn and prepare and to grow your leadership. When you stop and think about your philosophy of leadership, the toolbox you bring to the Daleville Community School Corporation today, those students, those staff members, those parents, and the school community, what stands out as probably that point to where you felt the greatest confidence in self as a leader?
I think just the experiences I've had with different leaders who I served under just helped me be very clear in my mind when I came in here, what I envisioned, what I wanted to see us be. And we've made some changes. A lot of things were great and no reason to change just for change's sake, but just a clear vision of where I see us going. And that's all based on providing the best education opportunities for our students. And I've always talked about meeting needs and interests of students as we can. Now we have some financial constraints to that, but just expanding and encompassing as many of those interests and needs of our students. And everything's based on that. That's where my vision starts.
Mr. Roach, you alluded to, I think what I hear your vision really embedded is that Daleville Bronco family concept, so to speak. And I'm sure I'm not putting words in your mouth, but that jumped out at me that Greg Roach is committed to serving. And certainly those in the medical field, especially these past few years with the pandemic and the emergency responders and those who stand on walls and drive the streets, walk the streets to keep us all safe. We're also blessed to have those types of individuals who serve. But educators sacrifice so much themselves, giving of their time to serve others, that many times we lose sight of adding value and serving self. Talk about your experience. The leaders that I've had in my life, those who've been most successful and been able to sustain effectiveness are those who get the fact that they can't bring greater value to the people that they're there to serve and to help grow if they're not growing their own value. Talk about your experience and how you've been able to succeed and keep that as a part of Greg Roach.
I think over time, I have learned that is extremely important to serve yourself. As a young athletic director, especially with no children when I first started out, I could devote a great deal of time to my job. And it's easy for administrators to get caught up in that. It is time demanding, and it's easy to put the ones you love on the back burner because you know they love you, and you can come back and apologize and make that up to them. But the lost time, you can't ever get back. My decision, one of my reasons for deciding to move from the athletic director position to an assistant principal's position, I remember the day clear. We at Mount Vernon, we'd host these big track meets, and that was my job. I was supposed to run those, and I missed, I think it was my son's third or fourth baseball game. He's playing a little youth league baseball. I'd missed his third or fourth game. I hadn't seen a game all year yet, and I remember walking behind our bleachers and thinking, I really care about these kids at Mount Vernon, but I love my son, and I'm not seeing his stuff. And that was really striking for me. I was hit hard with that. And I had interest in the assistant principal's job anyway. And I knew we had a principal retire and the assistant principal was going to move up, so there's going to be a slot. But that drove it home. It was a family-based decision for me. But it's easy to get wrapped up and just pull away from your family and not spend that time. I remember the principal that I succeeded as he retired at Mount Vernon. He said, you'll never not be thinking about what you can do in your building to make things better for your students and your staff. And it didn't register until I was actually in the seat, and it's true. So even at home, sometimes I was not present. And looking back, I wish I'd have known then what I know now. When I went to Blackford, it was an hour and 5 minutes away. So I would stay for some events, but not a lot because it was so far away. I would go home, and they understood that. And that just drove home the point to me that the family was important. So when I got the job at Daleville, I told them I will use all of my vacation days. I get 20 vacation days. I will use them all, I guarantee you, because I'll be a better superintendent if I do that. And it is so true. You can't, if you don't experience it, it's hard to remember to do that when you're in the moment and things are coming at you a mile a minute. It's true. I'm so much better to be able to serve the people here and the time that I'm here, rather than if I just burnt myself out and didn't take that time to recharge, spend time with my family, and get that connection for myself.
I love that. You just hit upon one of the greatest flaws that I had throughout my career was taking time away. And not because I didn't trust my team or staff, because they always had the skill and talent, but it was that piece of feeling a burden of increasing workload on others that too many times I allowed to get in my way. And what you just described hits on Dr. Stephen Covey's 7th habit, sharpen the saw. And I always loved that piece, sharpen the saw and clear the mind, get away from the norm, basically. His 7th habit and his great book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, was just outstanding. But I appreciate the fact that you were able to reflect throughout your career and make that adjustment. Not everybody can. I was one of those that did a bit, but not near enough, as I look back and reflect on that now. Mr. Roach, we talked about serving self and serving others. Who stands out in your life, your career, that really has helped mold and develop Greg Roach into the leader that we see today?
It would start certainly with my parents. From an early age, I think they saw the leadership capability that I had, and they cultivated that. And my dad would tell you, he knew when I was 9 years old, he would have said, you'll be an athletic director someday. Organizationally, and just I was a leader in the classroom and on my sports teams and things like that. Now, they were also really good about reining it in sometimes. I was very competitive, and that leadership probably wasn't a positive leadership all the time. So they were good about patience, pushing me to be my best and to lead others rather than just do my best and not worry about the rest of it and the team aspect, but then pulling me back in and hold me accountable maybe when I went too far and pushed beyond where I probably should have. But then professionally, Dave Driggs is the superintendent now at Tri-Central. And if you would map his career out and my career out, they follow the same path. He was my math teacher, varsity boys basketball and baseball coach. Then he moved up to an athletic director position after I left, after I graduated from high school, assistant principal, superintendent. And so I've kind of followed his path. He was always a role model for me. He was, in an appropriate way, he was a friend even when I was in high school and very supportive. And he was the same servant leader that I try to be. He wanted to make others better. He got accolades as a coach because we were successful, but it was never about him. He was always talking about what the players were doing and just things like that. Just his encouragement, his support, just the positive role model that he was. He was not a fire and brimstone coach. He was a coach that wanted to positively motivate you. And I'd run through the wall for him. I care very deeply about him and everything he's done for me and just shaping who I am today.
Excellent. Well, thank you for sharing that. And I hear the sense of passion for others coming through as you talk about your parents and Superintendent Drag in that aspect. And that really gets into the next area I'd like to explore with you a little bit. And that's a leader's role in transforming. Many times difficulty when it's perhaps managing change is that many people feel like, well, they're just asking me to move from point A to point B. That's really, there's not enough distance there that's going to matter. But when leaders are able to take that change and turn it into a true transformation, taking something inside and bringing it outside or vice versa, and applying that passion in that regard, it can make a huge difference overall. You mentioned earlier that vision aspect, and sometimes in a role of a superintendent such as you have, but particularly in a role with any leader, that vision and clarity of that vision getting communicated, getting sent into an informed manner throughout the organization can be one of the most difficult challenges an individual can have as a leader. When you think about challenges you've faced, think about opportunities you've had to transform. What jumps out at you? What's an example perhaps of something you look back on with great pride and hold your head up and just feel like, wow, that was transformation. That wasn't transition or change. That was truly transformation. And why?
Well, I think First of all, I've gotten better as I've gone through my career at explaining the why. And I've had direct supervisors, principals, and superintendents that I've worked for that were very top down. You tell them what to do. I've also had superintendents that were more collaborative, and just learning that over the course of time, explaining the why we want to do what we're doing. That's huge. When you want to make transformations or any kind of changes, that's where you start, and you hope they understand, and you hope they'll ask questions if they don't understand. But I think the other side of that is you have to have a staff that's accepting of the possibility of change. If they're resistant to any kind of change just because they don't want to change, it makes it more difficult. And I'm very fortunate here at Delville. I've got a staff, as I said, the family atmosphere. They want to do the best we can for our students. So when we start talking about changes, they're willing to listen and they're agreeable, first of all. And I think that comes from building a relationship with them and a relationship of trust. They know I'm not asking them to do things just to make their life miserable, or it's just something we're going to try this and see what it works. They know there's some thought process put to it. It's been vetted with administrators, and we think it's our best course of action. We've done a lot of things here. It probably changed a lot here at Daleville, but one of the things we did that I can think up off the top of my mind is one of our visions of our board was to have more digital tools used in the classroom. The staff was very receptive of that. I think they became receptive because I told them the one thing I can guarantee you is I won't just throw it at you and say, here, figure it out. We will always provide deep professional development on anything we're going to do that we need. And we've done that continually, and it continues. We have 8 days a year where we have professional development. We have, with the new changes to the state law, we have live virtual instruction the first half of the day. Then we have asynchronous instruction, digital instruction, online instruction, with a half a day for the staff to do professional development on and whatever we need to focus on. And I think that was big. You can't make that transformation if they have no idea what they're using or what they're doing. And we're still learning, we're still getting better, and we want to get better every day. Providing that support for them to be successful, I think, is key to any kind of transformation you're trying to make.
I couldn't concur more. One of the things that I still get a bit surprised by, being 2023, we're in the 21st century, in education and outside of education. When I have an opportunity to train with frontline supervisors, my experience the past 5-6 years as an educational leader, as an example, there's still the mindset of when the leader's there, all they're trying to do is catching me do something wrong, the old gotcha phrase, so to speak. What can leaders do to ensure that's not the case? And I think you've hit upon it a little bit, and I don't know if you've ever experienced that piece, but to me, it really gets into a trust aspect and just changing. I always felt, yeah, I want to catch you. I want to see everything you're doing great because I know it's there in that piece. And let's use that to help your peers and help your teammates grow.
Yeah, I can go back to an example when I was a principal. One of my goals, personal goals in school corporation, was that I would do a short walkthrough observation, 3 to 5 minute observation of every teacher every 9 weeks. And I had some teachers that they really didn't like me being in their classroom. I was only in 3 minutes a time, but they questioned, and it came back to me through discussion about how often. And I also had my assistant principals doing it. So we had 3 people in every classroom for 3 minutes each, 3 to 5 minutes every 9 weeks. So it was one of those things. Some teachers really didn't. Some teachers say you can come whenever you want, stay as long as you want. But some of them, they just didn't feel comfortable. And some of my better teachers didn't like that. But we had an example I can give, though. We had a parent challenge the grading policies and challenge the integrity of one of my best teachers. We met, and I could look at that parent and say, I've been in her classroom. At that point, it was 11 of the 12 times I was going in. I've been in there 11 times this year, plus our formal observation, plus our short observation. So I've been in there 13 times this year. So I think I have a good idea what's going on in that classroom. And it helped. It helped negate the whole issue. So the parents leaving the teacher, and this was a teacher that didn't really feel comfortable, didn't like it that I was in her classroom so much. And I just looked at her and she said, okay. I said, if I'm in your classroom, I can defend that I am in there. I know what's going on. I would use here, though, I'm in the building every single day that I'm here, like I said. So the teachers see me, they like that. I talk to them, and you build that level of trust that I tell them, I just want to see the good things going on so I can talk about what you're doing, so I can brag on you. And I said, now, if I see something I have a question about, I'll ask. But they're very comfortable with me here. I think for the most part, I don't get that, oh my gosh, there's an administrator in the room look. Any administrator knows it's like, oh, I'm going to administrator in the room mode. I don't see that here. They just keep doing what they're doing, and they know it's okay. But I've stressed to them that when I'm in there, it is not an evaluation for me. It's so I can see what's going on. And I tell them I enjoy watching the teaching. And it's been particularly rewarding seeing the elementary teaching, because that's not where my experience is. To go down there and see the things going on in the elementary has just been awesome. And if I can go just a little further,
No, please.
Yesterday and then today and tomorrow, I am reading to elementary classes, part of Reading Across America. And that's just tremendous. I've enjoyed that so much so far. And it's great to get in there with the elementary kids.
Good for you. And I can speak from, there's nothing better than walking through an elementary building and having the kids say hi or good morning. There's just something a little bit special about starting a day that way in particular. So good for you, man. Good for you. I appreciate you modeling that.
One other thing I can tell you, I learned from my superintendent up at Blackford. He said with the elementary students, always look at their eyes, because they will look at you.
Yeah.
And then they know you see them.
Yeah.
And anyway, he's dead on. I mean, I get high fives and fist bumps. And
yeah.
It's really awesome. If you ever need a recharge, just go down to the elementary. They'll recharge you real fast.
Absolutely. I've been recharged a number of times. I missed that part as far as being involved as a school district superintendent. And I think as we wrap up this first episode, Mr. Roach, there's just such an aspect, and I see this every time I'm with my young grandchildren, whether it's the two oldest who are 8 and 7 or the two youngest who are 3 and 1. Those elementary students as well are a reminder of how simple life can be. And we need that at times as leaders. And I'm sure you find that need at times, as you said, whether it's recharge, or sometimes that recharge is all about sharpening the saw a little bit too in the moment. And that's very important. So thank you for modeling that and sharing that. And Mr. Roach, it's an honor to have you. I hope you can stick around for another episode.
I sure can. Thank you.
Absolutely. We're talking to Greg Roach. Greg Roach is the superintendent of Daleville Community Schools, Daleville Community School Corporation, located in the Indianapolis, Indiana area. We recently had Ms. Leslie Winter, the superintendent of Mississinawa School Corporation, on. And one of the great things that I love, and I hope you're finding as well when you view or listen to our pod videocast, there is so much right about education. And Mr. Roach stated it a moment ago. All that right in education, it begins and ends with the people. And we're going to talk more about that with episode 2 with our special guest, Mr. Greg Roach.